Brenda Sue Schaefer was missing.
There's no indication where she is. She's not calling anyone. We presume the worst.
I've been prosecuting murderers for 15 years, and I've never lost a homicide case.
He was an evil person.
My job is to fight for justice.
The crime itself was so heinous, they were going to seek the death penalty.
I've been defending the accused for over 20 years.
They didn't recover evidence that would identify the assailant.
Ensuring the innocent don't serve time for someone else's crime.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to produce not one, but several reasonable doubts.
For true justice to be served,
we need to answer one single question.
In a quiet Louisville, Kentucky suburb, 73-year-old mother of 5, Essie Schaefer, is a nervous wreck.
Hello, police.
It's 2 a.m., and her youngest daughter, Brenda, has not returned home from a date.
Tom, my brother, called me and asked me if I had seen Brenda. I said no, and he said, well, you better get over here because she's gone.
We looked everywhere. We looked where we thought we might see a car that looked like hers.
The 36-year-old nurse shares a home with her parents, and it's completely out of character for her not to come home or call.
There was this feeling that something's really wrong.
As dawn breaks, the first clue as to Brenda's whereabouts comes in. And it's an ominous one.
A St. Matthews, Kentucky police officer found Brenda's car on the side of the interstate, and it was vacant.
Its right rear tire was flat. There was damage to a window. And near that broken window, there was blood spattering.
these are about the worst types of calls. It sure looks like something criminal happened, but what? Kidnapping? Rape? A murder? A family is hurting for information and you often have no idea. It's going to take time to put the pieces together to get them the answers they deserve.
Talk about pressure. It takes a special type of person to devote their life to being a criminal investigator. Just imagine going into work every day, knowing that everything you do is going to be scrutinized to the point where any mistake could ultimately allow a perp to walk free.
To be sure Louisville police get this one right, they call in the FBI for help. While forensics get to work on the car, detectives start putting together a picture of Brenda Sue Schaefer.
How you feeling? She loved her family. She was a really big help to her mom and dad. Number one, she was just a very, very pretty girl. Not overly fixed up, but just a real sweet person. She had been through a divorce and some really hard times.
But things seem to be looking up. Brenda's dating a wealthy businessman, 50-year-old Melvin Ignatow.
Mel Ignatow was a businessman who traveled to exotic places around the world.
Not long ago, he asked her to marry him.
She seemed really to idolize him. She was warm, and I got the complete impression that this was a wholesome, enjoyable, loving relationship bilaterally, and that sometime in the future there very likely would be a marriage as between them.
He took her to nice places, bought her nice gifts, and so she was, by all reports, enthralled with him.
Melvin's a generous guy with a reputation for buying his fiancé fancy jewelry.
When I saw Brenda, she had on an engagement ring that Mel had given her. It was very, very pretty.
The ring itself was valued at $20,000. And the parents saw her wearing it when she left for her date at 3 o'clock that afternoon.
Any victim that's missing with that kind of jewelry and that value, you'd have to look at robbery as a motive. Would somebody have accosted her? Would somebody have targeted her because of that?
It's 10 hours since Brenda disappeared. And it sure doesn't seem like she just up and ran away. But when the forensic results from her car come in, it only deepens the mystery.
The blood was analyzed and determined not to be Brenda's, but we thought that it could have been the perpetrator's.
After more examination, police conclude it's not the blood of Brenda's kidnapper either. It looks like somebody did a bad job of ripping out the car stereo and cut himself. It's a crime of opportunity, a false lead.
They had the dog sniff around the car. The dog did not pick up on any scent. And they drew the conclusion that she was not in this vehicle when it was parked and left here.
The flat tire isn't all that it seems either.
The conclusion was that it had been nailed. Nail had been driven into the tire. The police conclusion was that it was a staged event.
So the abandoned car is staged, but by whom and why? To make it look like a random attack? Who would do that? Somebody who wasn't random, somebody who knew her. With a crime against a woman, that always means you start with spouses and lovers.
It's absolutely right that the FBI should be looking at Brenda's fiancé. But investigators have to be careful they don't get ahead of themselves and spin a story in their heads based on likelihoods. Every crime is different, and you're likely to get into trouble if you get too far ahead of things you can't prove.
For the FBI, bringing Melvin in for questioning is just a start. They need to know what happened on his date with Brenda. And as it turns out, Mel is more than willing to talk.
He wanted her found, and he knew the time was ticking.
Tell us about the day in question.
And he recounted what they did that day, going to the Oxmoor Mall, walking around.
Well, try and remember, Mel. It's important you remember.
They went over to Tartan's Landing over on the Ohio River at the marina where he kept his boat.
Then from there, they went to a Prospector restaurant.
11 o'clock is when he said that she dropped him off at home, and that's the last that he saw of her.
Agent Shiner turns up the heat.
I was looking into his eyes right across the table.
What was she wearing?
Cream blouse.
Pressing him with questions. And I was leading up to.
Melvin, did you kill Brenda?
No.
And he's crying, he's choked up, he's really lost composure at this point.
All right, that's enough. This interview has to stop now. I will not allow my client to be treated this way.
He truly was concerned, and I thought it perfectly consistent with a man who had lost his sweetheart.
Ignatow's got to be feeling terrible that he didn't protect his fiancée. Are the police going to read his emotions as heartbreak or guilt? A misinterpretation could spell disaster.
I don't buy it. Too many times I've seen killers weep crocodile tears for someone they've murdered in cold blood. There's something that bothers me about Melvin Ignatow. But right now, investigators have to look elsewhere.
By day 5 in the search for Brenda, investigators know the odds of finding her alive are extremely slim.
We presume the worst. See, there's no demand for ransom. There's no indication where she is. She's not calling anyone.
Police comb her home for clues and get lucky. An incriminating letter from an old flame, Dr. Jim Rush.
Dr. Rush was a dentist that Brenda had worked for, and they dated for a while. And when we talked to other individuals, they claimed that when he drank, he became very abusive.
I think he never really quite got over Brenda Sue Schaefer and the relationship he had with her. I'm told that she wanted to get away from him. Word was, he used some substances on a fairly regular basis, and you didn't know what he would do when he was high.
The letter is dynamite. When the results come back from the lab, this case is blown wide open. A week has passed, and there is still no sign of Brenda Sue Schaefer. Missing since a night out with her fiancé, Melvin Ignatow, hopes of finding her alive are now dwindling. But police wonder if a sinister letter penned by a former lover, Jim Rush, can unlock the mystery of her disappearance.
The behavioral sciences unit found that there were behavioral traits shown in this letter that he could act in accordance of perhaps doing harm to Brenda Sue Schaefer.
Hell hath no fury like a woman scorned? Maybe, but one of the most dangerous things a woman can ever do is dump a guy with serious control issues. That nasty letter from Brenda's jealous ex, you have to take that seriously.
A jealous and abusive ex who's a mean drunk? That's a promising storyline. But again, if you believe in justice, you have to respect facts. Right now it's a lead, nothing more.
Investigators speculate. Did Jim Rush drink himself into a jealous frenzy and snap? Well, maybe he's the type. But it doesn't take long to find out that he isn't the guy.
We did a thorough check up on Dr. Rush and determined that he had an alibi for it that evening and resolved the fact that he had nothing to do with the disappearance of Brenda.
Now this is how it's supposed to happen. Theory: Dr. Rush got drunk and in a jealous rage murdered the woman who dumped him. Fact: witnesses place him someplace else. Conclusion: not him. And here's another fact: we still have no idea whatsoever what's happened to Brenda, and her family is in pieces.
God, just let us know something, if she's dead or alive.
I don't think my mother ever really gave up hope.
Mom would be praying that the next car coming down the road was going to be Brenda coming home.
Even if her body's broken, she said, we can fix her, but we all knew there was just no hope of that ever happening.
As Brenda's family cries out for answers, investigators decide to dig deeper into her and Melvin's tangled love lives.
So we are casting a wider net. We're interviewing a great number of individuals, friends of Brenda's, former romantic interests of Brenda and Mel Ignatow.
The first hint of the break, I think, was when we started focusing on Mary Ann Shore.
A part-time secretary, Mary Ann and Melvin were an item before he left her to move on to Brenda.
She was his, what they would call a booty call. It's well described. If you looked up slut in the dictionary, there would be her picture next to the word. It's horrible.
Mel Ignatow was the sun, the moon, and the earth in her life.
Police discover Melvin is a player, flashing his bankroll and running around with a lot of women. A state of affairs that Mary Ann doesn't like one bit.
She would stalk Mel. If he went out with someone, she would follow him.
Mel dumped Mary Ann for Brenda. Mary Ann wasn't happy about that at all.
So Mary Ann was stalking Ignatow and furious about Brenda. Could that big sparkling diamond have broken the camel's back? That certainly gives us a woman scorned. The question for investigators: did her anger turn violent?
Detectives Griffin and Sharber pull Marianne in for a grilling.
We were trying to determine if Marianne herself had any role in harming Brenda.
How many times have you met Brenda Schaefer?
Just the once.
She acknowledged that she had contact with Mel periodically, but she claimed that they weren't having any kind of a romantic relationship. She was saying that she didn't know what happened to Brenda and that she had no role in her disappearance.
We had asked her to take a polygraph, and she said, "All right, I'll take a polygraph."
Do you intend to answer truthfully each question on this test?
Yes.
Is your name Marianne Shore?
Yes.
Did you kill Brenda Schaefer?
No.
The results confirmed detective suspicions.
The operator said she didn't pass it. She's being deceptive. So we thought we're on the right track here.
There's a reason why in most cases you can't present polygraph evidence in court. They don't detect lies. They tell you if someone is anxious. That would be almost anyone hooked up to a machine by a cop.
Stop right there. A polygraph is far from perfect, but it's a tool. It has its uses. People often get anxious when they try to deceive. Marianne seems especially nervous when asked about what happened to Brenda. That tells detectives they might be on the right track.
After she left that interview session, she immediately called Mel and he met her.
Mel and Marianne went out in the pouring rain carrying an umbrella, just walking up and down the street talking.
And of course, we don't know specifically what they were talking about at that time. So that certainly piqued our interest.
To find out more about what these two are up to, the FBI decide to impanel a federal grand jury.
Sometimes grand juries are the only way to move an investigation forward. Prosecutors can put witnesses under oath and ask them what they know. It can be a long shot and risky, but in a case like this, it's a shot worth taking.
It sure is. A prosecutor can't turn around and charge somebody based on what they forced out of them. The Constitution has a big problem with that. It's right there in the Bill of Rights.
You don't say to your client, it's a good idea ever to go to a grand jury. To my surprise, when I told Mel that, he said, yeah, I want to do that. This man really is on a mission to find this lady.
You solemnly swear that you're going to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I swear.
Prosecutor Scott Cox is tasked with interrogating Melvin before the grand jury.
Scott had some very point-blank questions about, did you harm Brenda Schaefer? You know, did you abduct Brenda Schaefer?
I would not have laid a finger on that woman.
They draw a blank with Ignatow, so the focus switches to Melvin's ex, Marianne Shore.
That turned out to be the real turning point in the case, I think.
How well did you know Brenda Schaefer?
Scott Cox is asking Marianne, well, when's the last time you saw Brenda? And Marianne Shore says, I only saw her one time.
At Jim Porter's Good Time Emporium.
Okay, and so Scott Cox asked her something else and then said,
what did Brenda look like the last time you saw her?
You mean the last time or the first?
In earlier statements, you mentioned you only met her once.
How many last times are there, Marianne?
I can't do this.
She immediately just froze up.
So she flees from the grand jury room.
The grand jury bet paid off, big time. And catching her in a lie means police now have something to work with. Come clean or be charged for perjury.
Marianne, if you tell us, it'll be much better for you.
To save her own skin, Marianne decides she has only one option: cooperate with the FBI. And she tells an almost unbelievable story of excessive cruelty.
The crime itself was so heinous, it was like a horror movie.
In the 15 months since Brenda Schaefer vanished, her family never gives up hope of finding out what happened to her.
And if you tell us, it'll be much better for you.
Now, in an astonishing twist, her fiancé, Melvin Ignatow's ex, Marianne Shore, is telling investigators she can solve the mystery.
She said that she participated in the ritual torture and death of Brenda Schaefer and buried her body in the wooded lot behind Marianne Shore's home.
It looked like we had finally broke the case when Marianne Shore decided to cooperate. So it's a fairly exhilarating experience to know we're going to solve this murder.
Come on, Marianne.
I'm going to talk to my attorney.
Marianne swears it's not her, but she's willing to do a deal to reveal the identity of the real killer.
We agree.
Prosecutors don't love doing it, but sometimes making a deal with a more minor player is the only way to make the guiltiest face justice. And it's justice for Brenda that we're after.
Cutting a deal like this doesn't guarantee justice or anything like it. Marianne is in trouble, and her only way out is to throw somebody under the bus. She has to play down whatever she did and make it seem like somebody else is the real culprit.
Go ahead.
Melvin Ignatow murdered that girl, and I helped him.
Melvin did it, she says. Why? Brenda had called off the engagement and was about to dump him altogether.
He convinced Brenda Schaefer that he would like to have one final date with her, and she agreed to it. Melvin Ignatow convinced her to go to Marianne Shore's house by telling her that Marianne Shore loved jewelry, and she was very interested in seeing the item that Mel had given to Brenda.
Well, well, if it isn't the beautiful Brenda Sue Schaefer herself.
When she entered the house, Marianne Shore locked the doors behind her.
When Brenda and Mel came in, it was just first casual conversation, and then, according to Marianne Shore, Mel said, "I feel as though you're turning frigid."
Kinda sexually inhibited.
And I believe you need some sex therapy.
We want to help you.
We do, Brenda.
At which time, Brenda kind of poo-pooed that off, saying, "Don't be ridiculous, we're not going to do that." Then he forcibly puts his hands on her and starts telling her to take off her clothes.
Do it.
All this is according to Marianne, the jealous ex, who claims that over 4 hours, Melvin submits Brenda to brutal sexual torture while she documents it.
This way, honey.
At the conclusion of which, he takes her into the bedroom and kills her. After Brenda is dead, Marianne says they dump her body in a grave in the woods, a grave they had dug 2 weeks earlier. Once the body was disposed of, they set about covering their tracks.
After they took Brenda Schaefer's car onto I-64 West, parked it, punctured the right rear tire with a nail, and left it.
You can find her there.
It's a gut-wrenching story, but do you believe it? Marianne is a known stalker with a fraud conviction, and she lied to the grand jury. To save her skin, she needs to point the finger at somebody. There is nothing credible about her.
Fact is, criminals turning on each other ends up exposing what really happens in a lot of cases. That's the real world, though no one's going to convict Ignatow just on Marianne's say-so. Her story has to match the evidence and corroborate other testimony. Then you can get to the truth.
I can't do this. Yes, you can. I can't.
She's agitated, nervous, afraid, almost to the point of terrified.
You can do this. I know you can, Marianne.
Finally got her calmed down and called Mel.
Hello, Mel. It's me.
She asked Mel to come to the house.
He refuses to come to her apartment. He wanted to meet at a rendezvous point that they met at on Popper Level Road. And so that threw all of that initial plan into disarray because he wasn't going to come to her apartment where the equipment was set up.
The FBI are suddenly on the back foot. They need to move fast.
Let's wire you up.
The decision was made that Marianne Shore would engage in a conversation with Mel Ignatow that was secretly recorded, in which hopefully Mel Ignatow would make some admissions that would incriminate him in this murder.
Quickly, the FBI was able to put a body wire on Marianne and set up a surveillance van nearby.
They meet at a spot. He gets out of his car and does get in her car.
What's going on?
I'm in a vehicle with another agent and can listen in from the transmitter.
Are you getting so bent out of shape? Why are you getting so upset?
Undercover cops are watching in the streets nearby. Meanwhile, in the van, the other agent keeps everyone updated on what is being said.
The unfortunate thing was, though, every time he would key the radio to talk to us, it would interfere with that signal coming in.
That's not shallow, man. That's not shallow.
Frustratingly, all they get from Ignatow is broken fragments of speech.
That place we dug, it's not shallow. That was as good as we were going to get.
We didn't get the real information that we wanted and needed.
Have detectives blown their best chance of nailing Brenda's killer? Maybe, but they're not giving up. Mel Ignatow is put under 24-hour surveillance. Meanwhile, police put the screws on Marianne. They need to find Brenda's body.
I get a call telling me that they think they know where Brenda's body is, and it's in a somewhat swampy scrub forest.
You're out there in the mud and at night, and we weren't having any luck. A short time later, the state police cadaver dog arrived.
It takes Bingo about 10 minutes, and he hits, bang. There's the spot.
Careful now.
We can only see one plastic bag at first. The ends of the bags were secured with rope.
The smell, you could tell it was a decomposing body. It was very difficult.
So we get the body bag to the hospital within about 10 minutes of when we began the actual dissection of her body. So we knew the identity of this person is Brenda Sue Schaefer. No broken bones, no injuries to the exterior surface of the body, no puncture wounds, no bruises, no stabbings, no anything. Homicide. It's homicide by undetermined means.
They didn't recover evidence that would be able to identify Mel Ignatow as the assailant in either the sexual attacks or in the murder.
It's the news Brenda's family has been dreading.
Haven't you had misery or some kind of grief in your family that's so bad that it just eats at you?
My mother had to realize then that Brenda was dead and that we had to make arrangements for her, and that's when she went and found the nightgown for her to wear in her coffin.
Brenda Schaefer's missing persons case is now a homicide investigation, and cops have a #1 suspect firmly in their sights. That is, if he doesn't skip town.
They could see through the windows of the house that he appeared to be packing a suitcase. It appeared to the police he may be in flight.
Detectives move in fast.
We arrested Mel and took him on downtown to process him into the jail. We began the search of Mel's house, hoping to locate any evidence, but specifically we were looking for the film from the pictures that were taken and also the jewelry.
The existence of that film is a weird twist. If they can find it, they'll solve the case right there. But why would someone take pictures and document their crime? It actually does make sense. If Ignatow's a control freak, those pictures reassert his dominance.
I mean, we were literally looking at every nook and cranny that we could find and came up empty-handed.
Does that film even exist, or was it just part of a fabricated story to lay the blame on Mel? Remember, Mary Ann is a proven liar. It was behind her house they found Brenda's body. The case they have is against Mary Ann, not Melvin. But prosecutors cut a deal with Mary Ann, and they can't charge her with Brenda's murder. Somebody else has to take the fall.
Even without physical evidence linking Ignatow to the body or the scene of the crime, investigators are convinced they can convict him.
Now that we have made the recovery of Brenda's remains, we have Mary Ann Shore prepared to testify, we now have a case that we can win.
Order, order.
He's been indicted on multiple charges, including rape, sodomy, and murder.
The scene is set for Kentucky's trial of the century. The FBI and prosecutors are going to push for the death sentence. Ignatow's defense team thinks the case is so weak, the jury is sure to see through it and set him free.
This is like a football game. It's not who was right or who was wrong, it's about who can win.
Melvin Ignatow stands accused of the kidnap, sexual torture, and murder of his fiancée, Brenda Schaefer.
If he was found guilty of first-degree murder, then he would be eligible for the death penalty.
We wanted closure. We wanted the facts. We also wanted to know that Mel Ignatow would never be able to do this again.
Melvin Henry Ignatow, how do you plead?
Not guilty.
What the prosecution says happened to Brenda is that unfortunately she fell for a guy who needed to be in control. When Brenda had enough and decided to break things off, he set out to make her pay. First with her dignity, and then with her life.
That's the story they've been fed by Mary Ann Shore anyway. But why should a jury believe anything she says? People in town know better than to take her checks. Would they really send a man to death row on her say-so?
You swear to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I swear.
On September 24th, 1988,
Mary Ann Shore revealed to us that the plan was to bring Brenda Schaefer over to Mary Ann Shore's house.
I'd like to go home now, please.
No. Sit down.
They had the materials to bind her there already. They had the camera ready with multiple rolls of film.
Put your arm down. Put your arm down.
You tied her up.
According to Mary Ann Shore, she was bound face down on the glass coffee table. Her legs were tied, her hands were tied.
He engaged in a number of varying sexual acts of sodomy and rape.
Wow, Brenda.
During the sexual assaults, Mary Ann Shore's job was to photograph. And so she took numerous photographs.
According to Mary Ann Shore, this goes on over a period of about 4 hours.
I know at one point, by Mary Ann Shore's testimony, she took Brenda to the bathroom. And Brenda started crying. And it may have been at that point that Brenda realized that she was not going to live through this, that she was going to die in this crummy little house.
And Mel took Brenda Schaefer into the bedroom.
This way.
chloroform is poured onto her and around her until she ceases to breathe.
One of the things that I suspect might have gone through her mind while she was being tortured is that this is what people are going to think of me after I'm gone. And that's just sad, just terribly sad.
What happened to Brenda Schaefer is horrific. It never ceases to amaze me just how cruel and deranged some people can be. Melvin Ignatow deserves everything that the justice system can throw at him.
We can't bring Brenda back. We can try to find her justice. But we gain nothing by piling injustice on top of tragedy. We know for sure that Marianne was involved, but she's not on trial for murder, never copped a plea. Is it justice to convict somebody else based only on the story she tells to explain how a body was found in her backyard? Absolutely not.
Ignatow's defense lawyer, Charlie Ricketts, is eager to set the record straight.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to produce not one, but several reasonable doubts. Any one reasonable doubt is reason enough for you to resolve that doubt in favor of the defendant, Melvin Henry Ignatow.
Ricketts attacks the prosecution's weak spot, the deal they cut with Marianne.
Miss Shaw, did you have a meeting?
When I got into my cross-examination, I said, did they tell you that the sentence you will get will depend entirely upon your performance here today as a witness in this case?
Objection. Overruled.
Marianne hesitates. The deal she made means that for her role in the murder, she'll serve only 5 years.
We're sitting there waiting for the answer. And she says, yes. Everything that she said after that, the jury understood fully, was a matter of, I better give this the best performance of my life, or I may go to jail for a long time.
The defense attorney doesn't stop at just accusing Marianne of lying.
Their contention is this is a jilted lover in Marianne Shore, and that she alone perpetrated this heinous act.
It was the idea of a woman's scorn. If I can't have Mel, nobody can have Mel.
I was subpoenaed to court to produce the wire that the FBI had produced on the conversation between Marianne Shore and Mel Ignatow.
Don't worry about it. That hole we dug, it ain't shallow.
What I heard was, that place we dug, it's not shallow.
The tape is hard for the jury to understand. Charlie Ricketts, for the defense, is quick to point out its technical flaws.
That hole we dug, one would then presume the grave.
That hole we dug, it ain't shallow.
The word's not dug, it's got.
I didn't hear, oh, by the way, you know where we dug the hole and put the body. Oh, I didn't hear, you remember when I killed her on the glass table and you were there with me. I didn't hear any of that.
Ladies and gentlemen of the jury,
There is no proof.
this is a man's life. Just think about that.
Except the word of a very untrustworthy witness, who you heard gave the reason why she was giving this testimony, and that was to save her skin. Plain and simple.
After a 2-week trial, the jury retired to consider their verdict.
We think, all right, we're in good shape here. 6.5 hours later, the jury says, we've got a verdict.
And the verdict they deliver leaves the people of Louisville stunned.
Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, how do you find the defendant?
Not guilty.
Not guilty. It was as if a dagger had been stuck in the entire community's chest.
It's devastating for Brenda's family.
The scene that sticks in my mind of Charlie Ricketts and Mel Ignatow on the steps of the federal courthouse, smiling for the cameras. It was a good day for them, and it was a horrible day for us.
This man truly was the beneficiary of a wonderful system of justice.
Nobody should have been shocked when Melvin Ignatow was found not guilty. No responsible jury would or could sentence a man to die based on the word of a known liar who'd cut a deal to save her own skin.
It's true. The prosecution's star witness did fail to convince the jury beyond a reasonable doubt that Ignatow killed Brenda. He has to walk on these charges, but the fight for Brenda Schaefer to get the justice she deserves must go on.
Melvin Ignatow's hotshot defense lawyer has secured his freedom, but at a cost. Ignatow is broke. To pay his legal bills, he sells his house.
New owners decided to replace the carpet in that house. They noticed that the old carpet had actually covered over a vent.
How's that?
The new owners immediately contact the FBI.
I received a telephone call, and they said, I have some carpet layers in my house. Why do I care about this? And he says, oh, by the way, this is the house that was owned by Mel Ignatow. Now the hair is standing up on the back of my neck.
I drove out to the residence as fast as I could. When I walked in, the owner of the house had in her hand a Ziploc sandwich bag containing assorted gold and diamond jewelry and 3 plastic canisters containing 35mm film. Well, I brought the film canisters down to the photo lab, and we processed the film.
The pictures reveal once and for all the real story of what happened to Brenda Schaefer.
She was terrified, literally from the first photo to the last. There were 100 smoking guns. They confirmed in every detail everything Marianne Shore told us.
We have 105 to 115 pictures of Brenda Schaefer being tortured.
You could tell there was a male figure that was involved in the sexual assaults. You didn't see his face.
The FBI is convinced the male figure is Melvin Ignatow. Only one way to find out who's in the pictures.
The right to remain silent?
Time to bring in Mel Ignatow again.
So he's cuffed, bureau car. We take him back to the FBI office in Louisville. Now we're going to photograph Mel Ignatow in various stages of undress and now compare him with the photos. And he still does not know that we've got the pictures. But we're putting him in the same positions as the photographs.
Sit up.
Deirdre Fike says, all right, Mel, take off your underwear. And he goes, I am not taking off my underwear in the presence of a lady. Room went dead silent. So I move up close to Mel. I said, if you don't take those skivvies off, I'll take them off for you. And he just gives a sigh and drops his brief. Have them developed immediately and, of course, laying them out side by side. There's no doubt in anybody's mind. He still has on the same watch.
After over 4 years of evading justice, cheating the system, and lying to everyone,
I would not have laid a finger on that woman.
Melvin Ignatow is finally revealed without a doubt as Brenda's killer. Ignatow's defense attorney is stunned.
I felt like all the blood had drained out of my face. What in the world have I done? What in the world has the system permitted me to do?
Melvin did it. There's no shadow of a doubt. But the prosecution's rush to put him away comes back to bite them. You can only be tried once for a specific crime. It's called double jeopardy.
That's true. He can't be tried for the same murder twice. But to avoid justice, Ignatow committed other crimes. Remember when he told the grand jury, "I did not lay a finger on that woman"? That was a lie. A lie told under oath. That's called perjury.
We decided to indict Melvin Ignatow under the federal laws for lying in the grand jury, and we did.
From Mel Ignatow, the game is up. There's no wriggling out of this one. They've got him.
The very next day, in a packed federal courthouse, Melvin Ignatow stands up and admits to everyone present that he murdered Brenda Schaefer.
Ignatow is convicted of perjury. In 2006, he gets out after serving 14 years. By all accounts, his life on the outside is miserable, but it doesn't last long.
He evidently was drinking a lot. He stumbled and fell against, of all things, a glass coffee table, the implement that he used to torture Brenda, and cut himself and bled out and died.
The only sad thing about it is that he wasn't tortured before he fell through the glass-top coffee table.
Of all the things that could have happened to Brenda, this is probably the worst. As modest and pure as she was, this just is beyond belief.
If there's a lesson to be drawn, it's this. One of the greatest enemies of justice is impatience. Melvin Ignatow would have been convicted if the investigators had waited until they had proof. No defense lawyer could have argued those pictures away. And remember this, the person on trial could well be innocent. That's why the prosecution has to prove its case.
It's strange how this story played out. Ignatow got away with killing Brenda. His life didn't end behind bars. For prosecutors, we learn and go forward. But Ignatow didn't last long on the outside. If you have faith in justice, you know that it sometimes works in surprising ways. For Melvin Ignatow, his end was its own poetic justice. That's at least something Brenda's family can take some comfort in.